most.
Right now, it
Right,
seems
it's
like
Birdman.
everyone is focused on Wack 100.
I'm
He has
a dude to keep
previously
it 100.
received criticism
ain't
from
nobody
50.
bigger than the politics.
Sent
That's
for
my brother,
allegedly
and we get
betraying
on
Big
each other,
U
but
people
Birdman,
claim
out
that
of
this
every
move directly relates to Big U's indictment. Additionally, there are suspicions that Wack may be rigged up to set traps for rappers, which fuels even more rumors. Let's be honest though, these are not my assertions. All I'm doing is dissecting the topics that are circulating the streets. Therefore, don't blame the messenger. The absurd part is that it all begins with a single phone call. Wack acknowledged making the call. He added that it wasn't your typical call. It was crucial. Not too Big U. Wack sent a warning to Big U's wife about the impending federal charges. Wack seemed to know exactly when the federal agents would arrive, as if he had the timing down pat. Wait, who outside the system knows that much about a government operation that is kept under wraps? This isn't your typical gossip, is it? And consider this. Who, unless they are linked in from the inside, would drop a warning like that? At that point, 50 allegedly began to make connections. And the entire wiring whisper stopped sounding like unrelated online chatter and began to sound like something important that we should take seriously. Here's the twist though. Suge Knight apparently tried to raise the alarm long before 50 even intervened. He told Birdman to keep a watch on Wack 100 because, in his opinion, Wack was the one working for the Fed. When you consider that Sue really knew Wack from years deep in the game, that warning becomes much more poignant. Subsequently, the entire Big U scenario erupted. The 43-count indictment fell like a sledgehammer. RICO charges, wire fraud, extortion, and a host of serious offenses that may put anyone in jail or prison. Additionally, Big U was linked by the government to a 2021 case about the death of young musician R.W. Here's the catch, though. The whole 75-page indictment omitted that detail. Rumor has it that Nevada is taking care of that aspect independently. What shocked folks the most, though, was that the FBI was actually utilizing Wack 100's own Clubhouse tirades and podcast snippets as proof in the case. The most bizarre portion comes after. Wack didn't refute it at all. He chuckled. When your name is being dragged through a federal prosecution, that is not the response you want. It's the kind of laugh that leaves people wondering what's actually happening. This is not the first time that people have been suspicious of Wack 100. Let's go back in time too. 2006, when Wack and his brother were pulled up in Texas. Police discovered a loaded burner in addition to additional items inside the vehicle. Both males had criminal convictions. Thus, this ought to have been a federal lawsuit that was open and closed. Here's the shocking part though. The case simply disappeared in 2011, 5 years later. Not as a result of poor search or poor evidence. The suppression motion was turned down. As an alternative, the entire matter was dismissed on the grounds of justice. Additionally, that word typically denotes cooperation, if you are familiar with judicial jargon. People at Wack started acting rather funny at that point. And immediately after that, his access abruptly opened up. He kept appearing everywhere. Wack began handling well-known people, sharing alleged insider information, and acting like he could see and hear everything in every room. Those surrounding him continued to be charged in the meantime. The amusing stunts didn't end there either. According to reports, Wack was overheard on a federal, the Main Street Mafia Crips. Furthermore, why was Wack on that call? Sources claiming to be familiar with the documentation say he wasn't merely talking. He was making connections. Some are even speculating that he may have been the one who assisted the federal authorities in solving the puzzle. Whispers like this have circulated around Wack before, back when he and Birdman were confined together. They even ran Cash Money West together. However, when Wack took over Tekashi 69 for a man who had already been charged with federal ties, everything changed. In the streets, joining forces with 6ix9ine in was a direct career suicide. Wack even acknowledged in an interview that Birdman had questioned him about the entire matter. People noticed that Birdman started moving differently and keeping Wack at a distance. which spoke louder than words even though he didn't officially announce it. This is where it returns to 50 Cent though. Everyone is aware that the history between 50 and the game has always been tense. And Wack is in charge of running it. Beef was a complete mess. And Wack continued tossing it with gas rather than letting it subside. He appears on platforms with slick, direct criticism of 50, claiming that he is simply protected by the industry and that outrageous things like 50 isn't really from the streets anymore are true. He even asserted that anytime he visits Los Angeles, 50 gets to check in. In essence, Wack was saying that 50 wouldn't even be able to go through the West safely without approval. The worst part is still to come. Wack wasn't merely speaking carelessly about clout. He mentioned a real-life instance in which he and his crew arrived at the SLS hotel in heavy traffic, prepared to press 50 straight. However, according to Wack, it appeared to be a full-on military operation as they pulled up. He claimed that the level of security at 50 was so high that it resembled Navy SEALs wearing machine guns. Just that picture had many on the internet laughing uncontrollably. For example, why would you even acknowledge that? Then Wack had more shit to say when the Big Meech and BMF conversation roared back. He attacked 50 for allegedly squeezing every last drop out of BMF's name in the media's representation of the group. The entire tale has been exploited by the 50s to enrich himself. This is where things become very weird though. 50 has remained utterly mute, whereas Wax has been all over the place, hurling insults at everyone. No trolls, no power-style memes, no fancy Instagram captions. And that stillness was loud for a man whose reputation was based on online smoke. That's when the whispers shifted into serious talk. Sources familiar with the matter claim that 50 quiet is not only a tactic but also a possibility for survival. It has been reported that he feels Wack is sitting far too close to federal heat. Additionally, Wack might be attempting to get him into a situation that could quickly turn legal. The Big U indictment was dropped at the same time that the internet began to support that theory. All of the puzzle pieces appeared to line up together at that moment. 18 members of the Rollins 60s were named in a large federal RICO prosecution that included 43 counts. You know who wasn't on that list though? Wack. This is the point at which everyone began to side-eye. According to reports, his voice could be heard throughout the supporting documentation. It doesn't add up. The questions essentially write themselves if you are deeply involved in the discussions but not mentioned in the indictment. Wack dropped another bombshell just as the temperature was increasing, making the commotion in the streets even louder. Wack asserted that Adam 22, the creator of No Jumper, was also involved in the RICO scandal. This one came close since, as you may recall, Wack frequently uses that platform in an attempt to hurry Adam down there as if he didn't want him to talk too much. He even called into the show himself and said he had just gotten off the phone with his lawyer. Wack claims that the federal agents arrived and escorted Adam up that same morning before making a full round later. Wack then introduced a further twist. He acknowledged that he simply knew that the feds were heavily pursuing Adam and had no idea what they were specifically requesting. Adam 22 intervened and abruptly shut it down just when it appeared that things were getting out of hand, claiming he had never been arrested. He also threw some shade, claiming that Wack's imagination was overactive. And he made it quite evident that, at least for the time being, he is not being investigated or in any difficulty. Adam then revealed something much more intriguing. He acknowledged that the federal agents had arrived at his location and had a direct conversation with his attorney. They weren't searching for dirt at random, he said. They were entirely focused on Big U's cease and desist letter from almost a year ago. Yes, the one requesting that a podcast episode be removed in which Loose Cannon purportedly stated that Big U knew ahead of time what would happen to Nippy before it was taken down. Adam noted that the letter seemed extremely suspicious to him because it isn't addressed in the initial indictment or criminal complaint. Adam began to wonder what the feds were actually looking for in relation to Big U. You hit on Big U's wife, you know? You said 91st century sis. 1 second, huh? Permit me to go solo. Additionally, you sort of alerted him in capitals, all caps. He must go. I think I said for bad. Yes, fake purse. F60 telling on is what the 600 say, okay? So crazy. That's what the 4 said. And then the focus immediately returned to Wack 100 because it was he who attempted to pull. Add him into this controversy right away. Here's the catch, though. Additionally, Wack is not on that indictment. He appears to know far too much, though. At that point, he was heavily targeted by the internet. People began disparaging him under the moniker Rat100, and the remarks were vicious. A user said Wack is a terrific informant, a man of many talents, snitching being one of them. I never saw a so-called G that knows this much about the feds, said another. It wasn't simply trolling either. Suspicion has been building for years. Because, let's face it, it's odd that someone without a badge may divulge precise government information, including who is speaking and when. What do you think? Is there any substance to these accusations against Wack 100? Or are they all simply noise? Wax began acting like he wanted all the smoke just when folks believed things couldn't get any messier. Rather than keeping quiet, he stepped up his game and continued to hit clubhouse rooms while flinging names like confetti. His microphone always caused someone's reputation to suffer, and many began to question, is this reckless bravado, or is he dropping pieces of intelligence straight from a playbook? Rappers who formerly rocked with him, however, discreetly retreated, avoiding close contact as if they didn't want to be in the spotlight. Even men who had previously supported Wack began avoiding interviews and no longer attempted to defend him. The fact that his own circle remained silent said a lot because it's usually a sign that your allies are also doubting you. The wildest portion, though, comes next. Wack appears completely unfrightened. Rather than refute, he laughs and even challenges others to provide evidence. He acts as though every headline elevates him when they call him a rodent. He stays in the news with every rumor. To be honest, it sort of does. Controversy has become part of his brand. Additionally, he becomes louder the more people blame him. This is his survival strategy, according to some. Keep being so loud and visible that no one will be able to catch him sneaking around behind closed doors. Others, however, think he's engaging in risky behavior, one that culminates in a cell, a courtroom, or worse, since the block is ultimately keeping a tight eye on you when federal agents, rappers, and even your own peers are mentioning you. And now for the crucial query. What implications does this have for the rap game as a whole if Wack 100 is indeed that connected? Consider it. Allegedly connected to federal heat, this man manages artists, quarrels with legends, and stirs up trouble everywhere. It's more than just rumors. Influence like that has actual repercussions. Rappers are already speculating about severing all connections and refusing to have their names mentioned in any way. Some gamble because they believe the publicity and headlines are worth the chance. However, history demonstrates that vast empires can fall apart in an instant. Whenever federal authorities get too close, the repercussions might upset the entire industry. If Wack is really at the center of this maelstrom, not just him. The streets are now wondering if Wack is untouchable or if he is simply going into an impossible-to-evade situation. What are your thoughts on all of this, then? Post your opinions in the comments section. We are examining each and every one. And if you're enjoying these unvarnished breakdowns and unadulterated street stories, hit like, subscribe to the Gossip channel, and keep it locked in. Don't pass on the upcoming wild video to explore the pandemonium in further detail. Click on one right here.